it was there that I could observe the way they lived, and that I saw the poverty, the pollution, and the dirt very far away from the 5 stars hotels we were staying.
Hey, welcome to Green Canvas. My name is Toby Carpenter, and this podcast is all about creative individuals helping to tackle the climate and environmental crisis through their work. We'll be talking to a wide range of creative practitioners, from designers working with sustainable materials to artists and photographers exploring global warming. We'll learn more about their work, how they use their skill sets for positive environmental change, and also what tips they have for you to utilize your own creativity and help the world build the sustainable future our planet needs. So stay tuned, and I hope you enjoy and find Green Canvas useful. Our guest today is Valerie Leonard, a documentary photographer whose images often demonstrate the first-hand effect our environmental crisis is having on human communities across the world. Her mission to capture the dignity of men and women that live and work in difficult conditions has taken her to places like the open coal pits in northeast India, to the sulphur mines in Indonesia, and to the towering landfill sites nestled within the Himalayas. Her projects often become intimate portraits of the communities that live and work within environments like these, and in doing so end up providing a snapshot of the harmful impact our emissions and fossil fuel-driven economies are having on human life. If you'd like to check out some of Valerie Leonard's work before listening to our interview, we have a few links in the show description which will take you straight to the web pages of some of the projects we speak about in this episode. And so without further ado, here's our conversation, and I hope you enjoy it. And so you're a photographer that travels all around the world taking photos of environmental and human issues. And I wanted to start with asking you how you got started doing this, and how would you describe your journey as a photographer up until now?
Ever since I was a kid, I always wanted to be a photographer. Both of my parents were artists. My mother was a painter, and my father was a successful photographer specialized in celebrities, fashion, and jazz musicians. We all lived in Paris in the studio. My father, he was a very easy to get along with, and he was joyful, humble about his work, and he never criticized anyone. But, I was so impressed by him that I never dared to tell him or anyone that I wanted to be a photographer. I thought he was the only one to be able to judge my photos, and I was convinced that my photos wouldn't be good enough for him and therefore good at all. So I decided to keep my feelings secret. I graduated from university, and after university, I started working for Air France as a flight attendant, and I worked for 29 years. I was working on long hauls, so I traveled all around the world, and I loved it. 10 years ago, like in 2010, my father was 87 and still working as a photographer. And one day he called me and said that the doctors had diagnosed a leukemia and told him that he had only 6 months to live. So it was a very big shock for me, and I realized that I had to talk to him before he died. So I went to LA where he lived, and I told him my love for photography and why I kept it secret. So he asked me to show him some photos I had taken. And I didn't have any good pictures. I just had some photos I had taken during my trips with Air France. So he looked at them and he told me that I had the eye, that it was in my genes, and that I had to follow my dreams, and that I could be a photographer. So you can imagine how relieved and happy I was. So when I came back to Paris, I bought a very nice camera, and I went to Burma on my first professional trip as a freelance photographer. And that's when my father died, so he never saw my photos.
So throughout your time as a flight attendant, were you always dreaming of taking photographs during your trips around the world, but something held you back? in that process over that time?
Yeah, I took pictures, but I didn't feel confident, because I hadn't told anyone that I wanted to be a photographer. So I took pictures. I was always alone in the streets, meeting people, taking photographs, but keeping those photographs from myself. Honestly, I kept it secret until my father died, 6 months before he died. And luckily, I went to talk to him. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been a photographer at all.
And why was it environmental issues and human issues that drew you to photography and has taken up your focus as a photographer?
It was not environmental issues at first. It's more human issues. And that leads to environment issues, of course, because it's all linked all together. When I was traveling as a flight attendant, I used to go out on the streets alone and get in touch with the people. And I would leave the crew in the hotel and I would meet them again in the evening, but I was by myself during the day. So it was there that I could observe the way they lived and that I saw the poverty, the pollution, and the dirt far, very far away from the 5 stars hotels we were staying. And as I said, being interested in humans, we automatically become interested in the environment in which they live. So I was alone. It was easier for me to meet people, and I saw their living conditions. No water, no electricity, garbage everywhere, no medical help. And I realized how lucky I was to live in a rich country. And actually, these people, they're just like us. They just didn't have the chance to be born in the right place.
And these people that you speak about in the photographs you were taking in these streets around the world, what places or regions are you referring to in particular?
There are so many places because I've been everywhere. It was a daily experience all the time. Every time I used to go to Africa, all the countries in Africa, Madagascar was a big shock for me also for the poverty. And I remember we went one day with the crew. That day we went to have lunch in a remote village. And we had a nice lunch with the crew. And I went outside because I wanted to smoke a cigarette. And then I saw this woman. She was holding a baby and she was right there sitting on the ground. She was not even wearing clothes. She was wearing a kind of a bag made out of raffia. I don't know how you say that. And she was begging and she had nothing. And I sat down with her and I saw that the baby had scabies, on in his eyes everywhere. You don't die from scabies, you just go to the pharmacy and you get the right medicine and you don't die. But the baby was dying and I turned around and I cried because it was a big shock. And the difference with us having lunch inside the restaurant and seeing that outside it was reality. And that's where it struck me. I left the crew and they went back to the hotel and I stayed there the whole day and the evening. And I went back to the hotel very late that day. And I thought about it all the time. And I thought I should celebrate those people. I should photograph those people and talk about them because people here, they don't even know they exist there.
And so you're obviously traveling around the world and you're interacting with lots of people who speak different languages. So how do you, for example, go about making someone at ease or interacting with someone who doesn't speak the same language as you at all?
Some countries, I need to find a kind of an assistant, someone who can translate and be with me. But at the same time, what I do is I bring with me a notebook, a simple notebook, and I draw on it like Pictionary. I draw the sun, animals, people, emotions, and I ask them what it means, and they tell me in their language. And I write it down in phonetic language for me. And they are way much more interested in my drawings than in my camera. So when I travel for the first 10 days, I don't take any pictures, nothing. I stay with the people, I get to know them, to be accepted. I do those drawings. I try to speak as much as I can their language, and they love it because it's a mark of respect when you make the effort to try to speak their language, and 10 days like that. After 10 days, I explain to them what I want to do, what my work is, and I ask them for permission if I can photograph them. And they always say yes. And I ask them also to just ignore me, just do what they do on a daily basis, working, living, eating, sleeping, anything. And I'm just here. So I'm trying to be as discreet as I can. I never take a flash. I don't use a flash because the flash is very intrusive. And even the click of the camera is intrusive.
And did you always use this process of using a notebook and using drawings to communicate from day one?
Always, 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 always. And also, I carry a portable printer with me. And the first 10 days, I take portraits for them and I print out the portraits and I give them the portraits. And they're very happy because they don't have any photos. They don't have the money to pay someone, a photographer, to have a photo. And usually, what people do when they travel, they take photos of people and they show the photo on the camera itself. And it's very frustrating because then they leave. And those people stay there just with a memory of what they saw on the camera. So what I do is that I give them the pictures and they keep them. And I even buy the plastic film, that thing, to cover, to protect the photo so they can keep it for a long time.
And how do you normally choose the locations of where you want to go? How do you pick? How do you select?
It's an everyday work. Every day I read the news, international news, on internet when I have my coffee, and I try to find subjects and things that are happening in the world. For me, it rings a bell because I've been to those countries, so I can see if I can go there because I already know the country, if it's feasible, and then I go deeper in my researches, and I try to see if it's something very peculiar, something new.
So, for example, what's the last thing you've read in the news recently that's inspired a project idea or is something you would like to work on in the future?
It's a huge long-term project that I'm thinking about. It's about water, the war on water on this planet. We're lacking water with the climate change. So I'd like to go to India, and Chennai. Last year, there was 55 or 50% less rainfall because of the climate change. So the city went without rain for more than 200 days, which is not normal. And also, I want to go to Mexico. I mean, I don't know if you heard about the Coca-Cola company. And there's a big factory, and they are bottling bottles of Coca-Cola, and they need water for that. So now they're sucking the wells dry there and forcing the residents to buy water now. They don't have any more water. And even the water is more expensive than a bottle of Coke. So there's a lot of cases of obesity among children and people there because they drink more Coca-Cola than water. There's so many subjects pending on my computer because every day I write something else. So the water issue, I think it's a very long term. It's like the labors of Hercules. It's never ending.
And so you mentioned the labors of Hercules, which is a theme that you follow. What is this theme? How would you describe it? And when did you start following it?
When my father said that I could be a photographer, that I had to be a photographer, I came back to Paris and I bought my camera. And I went to Burma when my father died. So when I came back from Burma, I was not satisfied with my photos. I just had nice pictures of this beautiful country, nothing more. Anyone could have done the same. So I realized that if I wanted to be a professional photographer, I had to have a theme, a guideline, a style, So I asked Air France for some time off and I went to Mali and I went there alone as I always travel alone. So I rented a motorbike and I went to Bamako, the capital, and I discovered a district where all the blacksmiths worked. And these men are recycling metal and are working hard all day long in the heat and dust for almost nothing at the end of the day. So that's where it struck me, and it came to me naturally. I had my theme, the labors of Hercules, and I decided to celebrate the courage and the dignity of those who live and work in harsh conditions.
And so you've done a variety of really interesting projects that we can talk about individually, and it would take us a really long time. But I wanted to zoom in on three of your projects because of their environmental themes. One of these is Black Hill. And would you be able to tell us a little bit about Black Hill and how did this project come about?
I stumbled upon an article on the coal mines in India, in Jharkhand. Jharkhand is in the northeast of India. It's a huge region, Jharkhand. And so I called some friends of mine in Delhi and I told them about my project to go to Jharkhand. They told me it's a very dangerous place and there are no tourists, there's nobody. I'm not a tourist, I said. I want to go and document the mines and the people who work there. So I was very stubborn and I went to Jharkhand, and there to understand the problem is like, think about that region 80 years ago. It was like a jungle, plants, trees, animals, and farmers, farming. Back then, the government discovered there was coal in the underground. They decided to cut down the trees, everything, and open mines, underground mines. And to do so, you need dynamite and you need to get rid of the trees. So the people who were living there were very poor and the government didn't care about them actually. So they stayed there. They had to switch from farmers to miners. So now the land is dry. There's nothing that grows there and it's filled up with mines, open cast mines, and fire, because ever since like 80 years ago, the fire started burning in the underground and never stopped. I mean, never stopped. It's hell. So here and there you have a hole with the fire coming out of the underground. And the people in slums are living among those holes and the fire burning and the carbon dioxide smoke. So it destroyed everything. There's no water and there's 700,000 people living there with no running water, no electricity, no schools, nothing. And what do they do all day long? Starting at like 4 o'clock in the morning or 5, they go to the mines right next to their slums and they scavenge the coal. And they go barefoot with bags of coals to the city to sell it to the black market. And then when they're back by 8 o'clock in the morning, that's when the guards of the mine companies show up. When the guards are there, they come back to the mines and then they work for the company, and they carry in baskets on their head, they carry the coal to load the trucks. And when you see the photos, you understand that exactly the living condition, the horrible living condition they're in. Some photos you can see the coal on their faces. There's one it's a close-up of a young man and he's covered in coal dust, but you have to imagine that what's on the skin, it's in his lungs. So the life expectancy is like about 50 to 55 years old. And there are no way for him to go to a hospital, see a doctor. There are no schools for the children. So a lot of some Indians were very shocked about this tragedy, and the government decided to do something. They said, okay, we're going to build a town called, this town is called Bulgaria. It's like, I don't know, maybe 15 kilometers from there. And it's a brand new town, with cheap buildings. And they said to the people living in the slums and working in the coal mines, you're going to live in Bulgaria. But in Bulgaria, there are no stores, no schools, no hospitals, nothing, and no jobs. So it was they wanted to get rid of them, to get rid of the problem and get rid of the scandal. So remove the people, there's no more scandal. But those people, they have no jobs. So they decided to stay, and they're still there every day.
And is there any sign or do you know of any sign that this situation is improving?
Nothing has changed. Well, I haven't been there like 20 years ago. I've been there a few years ago, but I still talk to my friends and it's still the same.
And the toxic air that surrounds these mines, how did it smell?
Well, imagine that you buy some coal and try to burn it and stay on top of the smoke. It's like that everywhere, every day. And the ground is hot because of the fire, the underground fire. And the slums are on top of the mines, and sometimes it collapses. A house collapses and falls inside a hole with a fire and people die. But these people are what we call untouchables. There was a young woman, her name is Babli, and she was pregnant and she already had two children. And I tried to help her. And I called my friends in New Delhi and I told them, listen, do you have a job for her and her husband? Because the situation here is so horrible for everyone. I want to help at least one of them. And they said, okay, yeah, we have a job for them. And she's going to clean our house. And the husband is going to take care of a horse and our cows and the ducks. And we're going to send the children to school. So it was heaven. So I decided to buy a train ticket for Babli and her husband and the children. I had to take a photo of me holding the tickets. I had to make a statement that I bought the ticket, that I found a job for them. I had to take a photo of me and them showing it was really me and my passport. And the day they left, it took us like 3 days to organize everything. The day they left, I was not there, and they went and I asked my assistant to assist them to take them to the train station. When they got onto the train, the police came because they recognized right away they were untouchable. And they said, you have to get down the train. You're not allowed to stay here. So my assistant showed the police all the photos I had taken and the proof that I had found a job for them. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been able to take the train and travel to New Delhi. So you can imagine, this is just an example. So imagine that 700,000 people living there. So I don't think it has changed, but I haven't gone there in a few years now. But I talked to my friends and they told me it's still the same.
And do you think you will go back there again anytime?
I'd love to go. I'd love to go back to so many places and to see my friends, because every time, when you stay a month and a half or 2 months in a place, there's a bond with the people you stay with, because I don't stay in hotels. I live with them. So I want to go back there. I want to go not to take photographs, just to see them and be with them and bring them some stuff they need. I want to go there, but I haven't been traveling in a year now,
And another of your projects, Cash for Trash, saw you photograph these mountains of trash in Kathmandu Valley in Nepal. Could you talk a bit about this project too?
When I went to Nepal, the first thing you think about when you think about Kathmandu is the Himalayas and the beauty of the scenery there. But you cannot imagine the pollution. And Kathmandu is one of the most polluted city I've ever seen. And crowded, noisy. There's no sidewalks to walk. You have to find your own way through the cars and motorcycles just to walk from one place to another, just for 20 meters. And I was on my motorcycle with an assistant. We were just traveling around Kathmandu, and in the suburbs we found a place, the landfill. There was a landfill. And then we went to see the people working in the landfill. And I had to ask for permission because the company that ran the landfill wouldn't allow me to take any pictures. They're not proud of what's going on there. So it took a lot of patience to have the permission to be there. So the people who work there explain me that every day, there's a truck that comes in the morning with 40 tons of trash. 40 tons of trash in that place. It's on the hills. It's a beautiful place, and they dump the trash and they covered the trash they scrap. What they do is they have a tractor that scraps off the dirt from the mountain, and they cover the trash with it. And then again, other trucks, they come every hour and they dump their trash there and they cover it again. And when the hill is too high, when they cannot go any higher, they change and they move to another place. Problem is that the trash is there. And when the rain falls, the water goes through it and drains the chemicals and the toxicity into the groundwater and the rivers. And the farmers who have goats and sheep, the goats and sheep drink the water from the river and they're intoxicated. So it's not the thing we think about when we think about Kathmandu. Kathmandu, we think about the Buddhists, the music and the architecture and the temples, and the beautiful Himalayas, but we don't know this exists. Actually, the landfills like that, they exist everywhere, and people are not aware of that.
Are there any images or photographs that you took that stick out to you when you think about this project? When you think about this project, what images come first to mind?
It's invisible. At first glance, you just see trash, and then you notice there's a human being trying to climb onto the trash to pick some plastic bags. And I'm telling you, the stench, the smell is unbearable. And they have no running water, and they're paid almost nothing. But that's the only job they can have.
And how close by to the landfill do these people live?
It's like 1 kilometer. It's nothing. Or sometimes it's 200 meters. All the houses are scattered.
And another of your projects, Java, in Indonesia. I'm interested to hear a bit more about this project too.
There's a volcano called the Kawah Ijen. It's a sulfur active volcano, and it's like 2,500, 600 high meters. And at the top, there is a lake inside the volcano. The lake is not water. It's the most acidic lake in the world. The pH is 1. So you put your finger in there and it's burned. It melts. Inside the caldera, on the sides of the caldera, the volcano emits some smokes. Actually, the miners, they placed ceramic pipes to channel the smoke from the sulfur. And inside the pipes, what the smoke does, it condenses into liquid sulfur. And at the end, the sulfur, when it comes out from the pipes, it solidifies into hard sulfur. And these men, what they do with rods, metallic bars, they break pieces of sulfur manually, and then they carry those chunks of sulfur in their baskets down the volcano to sell the sulfur. Thing is that they make more money than if they were farmers. That's why they do that dangerous job. But they make like maybe $5 a day, which is a lot there, but it's very dangerous because it's toxic. You have sulfuric acid and you smell that. And it smells like a rotten egg, but you can't open your eyes. You can't, when you breathe in, it burns your lung and your throat and your eyes too. You cry all the time. And they do that every day. So I decided to meet them and stay with them. And I stayed with them for 3 weeks. Because when you climb up to that volcano, there are no roads. You walk, right? And 600 meters down the crater, there is a checkpoint with like 2-3 little houses, wooden houses. No electricity, no water. And the miners sleep there. And every day, they climb up and they go down the caldera to work and to collect that sulfur. And I would climb up with them, climb down the volcano inside and stay there and take photographs. But it was very, very difficult, very dangerous. And because I'm very clumsy, I fall all the time. And I had bought a mask back, in Paris, but I couldn't use it. I tried to use it, but the mask was too big, so I couldn't look inside my camera, So I had to remove the mask. These men, they don't have the money. Yeah, they don't have enough money to buy a mask. They just cover their mouth with a cloth or even, fake masks, but it doesn't work. And they're used to it. And they all smoke every day.
Not a good combination.
No.
And did you feel the effects of the smoke and the fumes every single time that you left the site? Did the effects of the fumes stay with you physically at all?
I didn't leave the site. I was staying there for 3 weeks, so I never left the site. It was 600 meters down the volcano. On the sides of the volcano, that's where I was staying for 3 weeks. And actually, after 3 weeks, both cameras broke down because the smoke and the acid went inside the components, of the cameras, and I couldn't click anymore. I was coughing, and my eyes were burning all the time. But when I left after a week, I was just fine.
And amongst these projects that you've done, and even the ones that we haven't spoken about, what would you say are the most shocking things that you've witnessed or seen throughout your time over the last years as a photographer?
The most shocking, it was black hell, really, because it's not like in a volcano there are maybe 300 men working, but in black hell there's 700,000 people who are stuck, trapped in hell there, and this was very shocking seeing these women carrying the children, even babies, to the site to work. And those babies working already by playing with coal and try to mimic their mothers, like breaking the coal and putting the coal into the baskets. And many times I wanted to cry. And when I was crying, I would leave because I couldn't show my tears to these people, which I have a lot of respect for them. I couldn't do that. So in front of them, I was joking, playing hide and seek with the children, but I couldn't show my tears. No. So it was very hard.
And so would you say that Black Hole is perhaps the project that has had the biggest impact on you and your outlook towards life and photography?
Well, my last project had a big impact on me. I went to Indonesia, to Java again, but on the other side of Java. I went there 3 times actually for a month and a half. And it's the last project. It's called the Guardians of the Forbidden Forest. It's about the Baduy people. It's a community that lives in the jungle in the southwest of Java. This community has been living in an area like it's 5,000 square hectares they have there, and they've been living there for more than 600 years now. And the Baduy were animists. They believe in the water, the nature, the rivers, the trees, the animals. There's a soul everywhere. And they are convinced that they are the guardians of the cosmic balance of our planet. So they decided to set some rules, very strict rules, 600 strict rules to stay away from the modern world and to protect themselves and to protect nature, most of all. So among those rules, electricity is banned. Schools are banned from the government. I mean, they told me that what is short must not be lengthened and what is long should not be shortened. That's a very simple way to put it, but that means that they shouldn't change anything. Anything that was here for a reason. So when they go in the woods and they cut a tree to build a house, they plant a tree that very same day because nothing has to be changed. And their land, the forest, remained the same. The nature is intact, has been intact for more than 500 years. And it's very interesting to live with them because they have this notion of respecting the nature and the notion of the time that's passing. They take the time. They're not in a hurry, of course. They have a way to dress also. The Baduy that are respecting the rules, like 100% respecting the rules, are dressed in white and black because white is purity. And the other Baduy that are respecting the rules, let's say 80% of the rules, are dressed in blue and black. That's it. They walk barefoot. They meet the government once a year at the Seba ceremony, and they tell them to respect nature. They tell them you have all the things they should do and shouldn't do about nature, about the planet, because they are still convinced, that they're guardians of the cosmic balance. Actually, the government and Indonesian people respect them and think that they have mystical powers. So they're kind of afraid of them and they respect them. That's why they kept their land intact. And that's why the government doesn't kick them out from the land just to try to find some petrol or whatever, in their land. That's what they're doing for the other tribes called the Orang in Sumatra, for the palm oil. So they're cutting down the jungle and they're burning the jungle with the animals inside also. And Orang Rimba, that's the name of the tribe. They don't care about the Orang Rimba because they don't think that they have mystical powers. And for example, one day there was a oil company that sent some engineers there to find if there was some petrol or something else in the ground. And the chiefs of the Badui, there are only 3 chiefs, the big ones, came to see them and told them, tomorrow you're not coming back. And they never came back.
And so the stories and the projects that you immerse yourself in and you take photos of, they're extremely moving projects, even to hear you talk about all of these stories now and not even with the photographs in front of me. So I wanted to ask, is there anything in particular that you'd like viewers of your work to walk away with when you set out to do these projects?
Maybe they discover new people and they realize that other people live differently and have hard lives, and they should consider that. Maybe it's a way to open their eyes and their heart to others. That's what I'd like them to walk away with.
And in terms of the environmental crisis and the climate crisis, what do you think are the best ways of inspiring people to commit time, energy, and money into helping environmental causes?
If we had more documentaries on TV, human documentaries on TV, instead of those TV reality shows that are easier to watch, we should have more documentaries on internet, on medias, to show reality, the reality of this world, and air them not in the evening very late, but air them on TV, broadcast them on TV during the day or at 8, so that people would stumble on it and say, oh yeah, that's interesting, I should watch it. But instead of that, it's the opposite. But I'm very confident and positive. I think that more and more now people are more aware of what's going on in the world and the environment and those crises we're going through, and they're more interested. So I'm getting more positive and confident about the future. And also I'd give an advice for those who want to travel as an amateur photographer. Travel alone. Don't travel with someone. Always travel alone, because then people won't see you as a tourist, won't be afraid of you, and people will open their doors more easily. You get in touch with them very quickly when you're alone. When you're with someone else, they see you as a couple. For example, you go to a restaurant. Right next to you, there's this man alone at his table, and you talk to him more easily, when he's alone. If he's talking with a friend, you're not going to talk to him. So travel alone and travel slowly. Stay as long as you can at the same place. You don't have to travel all around the country. You stay in one place to be accepted, to get to know the people and ask them everything. Ask them questions. Try to take your time.
And are there any great books about the environment, climate, or nature that have particularly helped you with your work?
The wonderful photographer Salgado, and I admire his work and his commitment. There's a big book called Genesis. It's a wonderful book. And also I watch a lot of lectures on the net also. So there's a photographer, his name is Matthias Klum, and he's a filmmaker, and he creates art projects and thematics connected to environmental issues. Wonderful. You can listen to his lectures. He's a wonderful photographer.
And because we've covered so much in this interview, and it's been so great to listen and hear about these stories and experiences that you have, before we wrap up, is there anything I've missed or any last words you'd like to say to listeners?
No, I think we're fine. I think that's fine.
Okay. Well, I just want to say thank you once again. It was so interesting to hear your stories firsthand. You have so many amazing stories, and so I'm really looking forward to seeing more of your work in the future.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of Green Canvas. In 2 weeks, we'll be back with the next episode, where we'll be talking to the sculptor and underwater photographer Jason DeCaris Taylor. Jason's sculptures aren't like anything you've probably ever seen before. You won't find them in a town square, a famous high street, or the offices of a high-flying corporate skyscraper. In fact, you won't find them anywhere on the ground at all. Instead, you'll find them submerged into the ocean, where they become new habitats for marine life and act as artificial reefs. helping underwater creatures and plants to thrive. In the meantime, if you think this is a podcast a friend of yours will enjoy, we would love for you to share it with them or leave a rating or review on Apple Podcasts. It helps us know what you think and others to find the show. And feel free to get in touch with us anytime at hello@greencanvaspodcast.com. We would love to hear your thoughts on the episode or any recommendations and questions you may have for future guests. Thank you again, and I hope you have a great day.